folks, if everybody's ready, we'll get started. I'm sorry about the small number, but we're mighty in spirit, are we not? You never know with these events who's planning to come. I guess maybe that just makes it all the more fun. And we have to consider that not all topics are of interest to all people. So we'll just go with what we have. Saw an interesting story this morning on Facebook about how easy it is to form opinions, and sometimes those opinions are wrong. There was a gentleman that went to the flower shop and he bought 4 bouquets exactly the same. And when he went to the checkout, the cashier took one look at it and decided that he was catting around, so to speak. And so she made a snide remark under her breath. But he rose to the occasion and said, "Let me tell you, this one is for my mother. It's just like what my daddy did for her all the years that he was alive. This one is for my wife because she just loves me so very much. She deserves this and more. This one is for my daughter because she needs somebody in her life to show her what a proper relationship should be. And this one is for you because you look like you need to have a good day." So it's very important not to form judgments. Well, the history of Valentine's Day and the story of the patron saint, Saint Valentine, is shrouded in mystery. So regardless of how many Saint Valentines, or regardless of the significance of February the 14th, this we know: February has long been celebrated as a month of romance, or a month of love. But there are some things we don't know. For instance, XO means hugs and kisses, right? Well, does it really? Because you see, X stands for kisses. So shouldn't it really be kisses and hugs and kisses and hugs? Instead, we say hugs and kisses. We don't know why it's shaped up that way. We're also uncertain about the origin of that cherubic little winged infant that wields a bow and arrow. We know him as Cupid, who serves as our Valentine's Day mascot. His story is one of myth and legend, but we know he dates back to the Greeks, who knew him as Eros, the god of love. But there are some things we know. For instance, we know that written valentines made their appearance in 1400 in England. We know that because the oldest valentine in existence is in the museum, the British Museum in London. We don't know why people stopped singing valentines. I have a theory on that. Perhaps it was the quality of the voice, like mine. And we know that the Postal Service became involved because the first mail-posted valentine on record was mailed in 1806. Well, the industrialization of Britain in the early 19th century brought in some rapid advances to printing, and guess what? Valentines began to be mass-produced, which made them become immensely popular. During the Victorian period, there was one collection of more than 1,700 examples of valentines saved, and they're displayed in the Museum of London. This is the archive of Jonathan King. Guess what kind of business he ran? A card-making business. Well, not all Valentine's cards are romantic. I want to tell you that first of all. In the 1700s, there was something introduced called vinegar valentines. We would refer to them today as Valentine hate mail. These cards were designed to insult. So they typically lampooned a man's profession or a woman's appearance. one of the examples that I pulled is titled Miss Nosy. And it reads, well, it had the cartoon picture of the lady with the big nose. And it reads, on account of your talk of others' affairs, at most dances you sit warming the chairs. Because of the care with which you attend to all others' business, you haven't a friend. See how cruel that is? And there's another one that reads, Miss Gray Hairs and Wrinkles, don't look quite so old. Don't let it surprise you to find yourself old. The old family record with truth on its page tells a horrible fact about your present age. Your ma or your pa may have said you looked young some 20 years since, but now you're among the old maids of this world, without a chance for a beau, for Cupid's grown gray since he cut you, you know. Well, sometimes men would send cards to their male friends in order to mock them, with examples featuring taunts about baldness or alcoholism. It was clearly insulting to receive a card like this, which possibly accounts for the fact that relatively too few examples survived. However, I did find two, and I'm going to pass them around so you can see, but I want to read to you what was written on the Valentine. You can see they're grotesque. The lady with the bird up at the top that's saying cuckoo says, one day while walking out, you heard some fella say, gee, she's a bird. You did not see him when he winked and said, that bird should be extinct. And the guy with the heart, with all the arrows in the heart, reads, 'Tis said you share your love with many, but I believe you have not any, at least enough to give away. You keep it for yourself, they say. Well, it's no surprise that right behind those, more hate mail, called Penny Dreadfuls. They sold for a penny. The design was quite dreadful in nature, and more than often obscene, and it caused close social, religious, and postal service scrutiny. As a matter of fact, several countries banned the practice of exchanging cards through the mail for a period of time. As a matter of fact, the Chicago Post Office rejected some 25,000 cards in the late 19th century on the grounds that they were not fit to be carried through the U.S. Postal Service. And I found an example of a penny dreadful. Well, for many years it was considered improper for a lady to send a Valentine greeting to a man. I personally am very glad that changed. My husband and I have exchanged Valentines now for 47 years. Esther Howland was the first in this country to send to sell Valentines, and that was about 1850. As a matter of fact, she sold about $5,000 worth in her first year. And remember, that was back in the days when cards only cost like a nickel and a dime. So she sold an awful lot of cards. Well, mechanical Valentines were introduced in the 1940s, in case you're wondering. Mechanical Valentines are where you pull the tab and something moves. I have an example of one here. I'm going to pass it around. When you move the levers on this, the children move. Well, presently in the U.S., there are over 1 billion Valentine cards sent each year. Would you have thought that there were that many? It's a lot of cards. And besides America, Valentine sharing, as we know it, is also done in Canada, Mexico, the United Kingdom, France, Australia, Denmark, and Italy. but it's also celebrated in different ways in other countries, and I'll tell you one of those in a minute. Well, a couple of interesting facts about Valentine's Day that you might not know is that women buy 85% of the cards. That teachers receive the most Valentine cards, followed by children, mothers, wives, sweethearts, and pets. As a matter of fact, about 3% of pet owners will give Valentine's Day gifts to their pets. Well, in Finland, rather than celebrating Valentine's Day, they celebrate Friends Day on February 14th. It's more about remembering your buddies than your loved ones. Well, when did February the 14th become designated as St. Valentine's Day? Does anybody have a clue? 1537. King Henry VII declared it St. Valentine's Day. Well, there's some advantages for all of us for Valentine's Day. For instance, and we have it on good authority here because it was the physicians who proclaimed it, they advised their patients to eat chocolate to calm their pining for their lost loves. So chocolate is a good thing. As a matter of fact, it was Richard Cadbury who produced that first box of chocolates to be sold on Valentine's Day in the late 1800s. Did you know that 73% of the people who buy flowers for Valentine's Day are men? That doesn't surprise you, does it? Maybe the percentage might, 73% versus 27% women. And this next one, I've got to give you a little personal story on this one. 15% of the women in the United States send themselves flowers on Valentine's Day. And why do you think they would do that?
Is there other people that they work with are getting flowers and they don't want to not have flowers?
Absolutely. I worked in one business some years ago, and there was one lady. I mean, the rest of us, if we got a bouquet of flowers, that was great. If we didn't, that also was great. But it was very important for her. And every year she would get no less than 3 until somebody ratted on her. And then the flowers came to an abrupt halt. But that's a lot of money to spend on yourself. Well, there's over $1 billion worth of chocolate purchased for Valentine's Day just in the United States. There is an average of 220,000 wedding proposals made on Valentine's Day. And every Valentine's Day, that beautiful city of Verona in Italy, where Shakespeare's lovers Romeo and Juliet lived, well, they get about 1,000 letters addressed to Juliet. I want to share with you a couple of, I'm going to intersperse personal and letters from people in this area. And then, we'll get to the personal part of it. I am proud to say that I have my very first Valentine. This Valentine is 47 years old, because we'll be married 48 in June. And this was the first one that he sent me. And, it was very pretty, but it's not really elaborate. I mean, there's just a difference in what you bought in the 60s and what you buy today. Well, it doesn't always have to be a Valentine. We've done different things over the years. One of the things that I did, Bill had to take a trip somewhere, so I made him some bed palanca. Bed palanca are just little notes that, he could read and enjoy. It's little things like, do you remember what prurient means? Please see other side for correct answer. Answer says, we'll have to discuss this at home. Do you remember when you first whispered, I love you? Answer, December 5th, 1967. Do you remember the Terra rooster at Gill's place? Was he red or white? He was red. I know. It was a personal experience with the rooster. And, so on. And Bill really liked this kind of thing. So I have a whole box full of things that I've kept over the years. I don't know how long I'll keep them, but I've kept them till now. He has a sweet habit of writing on the envelope and then coding a message on the back. And I have to figure out what it says. Not all of them were really elaborate. Some were frivolous, as in this one. To my hubby, the man who has everything, from the woman who puts it all back where it belongs. And sometimes they were the funny ones. This one, for my forever Valentine, you make my day delightful. You make my week sublime. You make my year so dandy, dear, and my decade one great time. You make my century sparkle and my millennium shine, which means I'll be eternally your loving Valentine. Well, back in 1884, Mr. A.B. Woodard wrote this letter to his hoped-to-be wife, Ella. He addressed it, "My dearest friend." Things were a lot different in the 1800s. Having you for a friend, why is it that I wish for a still greater blessing, one that stirs my pulses to new and better emotions and my soul to higher joys? I tremble for the words that are to fall from your lips as I ask a place in your affections. You say that I am joking to choose you as a sweetheart. If actions speak louder than words, I hope you will say I am not. You say you are not even so much as pretty. To me, your face is the fairest that ever the sun shone on. Grecian's chisel never traced a finer form or lovelier face than yours. Oh, girls. Beautiful girl, thou art a vision of joy to my throbbing heart, a star sent down from a world of bliss, and all undimmed by the shades of this. A rainbow pictured by love's own sun on the clouds of being, beautiful one. I think he borrowed. 'Tis your love that I ask. Will you love me? Will you give me your heart and hand with a promise that sometime in the future you will be dearer than life to me? I know that I'm asking for the costliest thing ever made by the hand above, your heart, your life, your love. The affections are too sacred to be trifled with. Love is the only loan for love. My love for you is sincere, for I have tested it. My heart loves no other. My eyes seek no other. You fill my very life. Affectionately and devotedly, A.B. Woodard. A note, Mariella Bryant was 22 when this letter was written. She married Asa in November of 1884. The letter was written in May. And their first child, Asa, was born in September 1887. Well, they were not married very long. He died in 1892 from malarial fever at the age of 30. So it was good that they had such a rich love in the period of time that they lived. Does anybody remember the name Samuel Rump? Samuel Rump. Anybody know what he's significant for? Absolutely. There was a lady that lived in Perry. Her name was her married name later was Merle Norwood. She sent this to Samuel Rump. It's an invitation. It says, the sign of the heart is pleased to invite your presence at 8:30 on Friday night. Hearts that are brave and loving and true will be ready and waiting to welcome you. The password is love, which alone has the power to gain you admittance to Cupid's bower. Here's his response. My dear Merle, it surely was sweet of you to send me that lovely invitation, but sweet girls are always doing sweet things. I surely wish I had gotten here a little sooner, but as it didn't, I wish it had gotten here a little sooner, but as it didn't, when I got it, I had just accepted another invitation for Friday night. It surely was good of you to say that you would get a date from me, but listen, if I could have had it, I think I would have rather had a date with you. Well, must close and go to school. Your good friend, Samuel Henry Rump. Sometimes Valentines have, lacy, really pretty kinds of things. Sometimes they're very elegant. But every mother's heart likes this kind. This was from my David, for my mom. He was a senior in high school. Just in case you need a big reminder of how much I love you, open up this card. Open again. Isn't that sweet? And then, when computers made their debut on the scene, my children were just entering high school. Do you remember that dot matrix printer? This one's from Sherry. She was so proud. She created her own Valentine. It says, I love you. But then she resorted back to the old-fashioned way. Have a very happy Valentine's Day, Mom. Love, Sherry. And as sweet as this is, with the thought, this is the one I treasure the most. And there is nothing that even looks Valentine-y about this one. She even used my stationery. It says, all roses are red and all violets are blue, but there will never be a mother quite like you. And of course they came Bill's way too. Daddy got some, Mama got some. We have always had the tradition at our house of sharing Valentines. I just feel like that there needs to come a time when you just stop and say, I love you this much. And so we've always done that. So now we're taking it on to the next generation. So the box arrived yesterday to the ones in Dallas, and so my my messenger just filled up with great pictures. Happy children. So that's, a lot about what, love is like. I want to share with you a couple of old Valentines. This one is really, really old. These were made first in Germany. They're stand-up, kind of Valentines, and this one has lost its sticky and needs a little help. So we'll try to give it some help. This one I taped to the back of an acrylic holder, and I'm going to have to do something like that with this one. But, these are very elegant Valentines that somebody's paid a good bit of money, for. Back after the turn of the century, do you remember window Valentines? Where you open the window and there's a message inside. And here's another one. Do you remember taking the doily and making Valentines. Sometimes I wish life would come back to such simplicity. And then Mrs. Scarborough in the 1930s received this one. And it is very fragile. As a matter of fact, it won't even sit straight. But it folds up and then opens up, into a mushroom. We'll pass it around. And I want to share one more part of a letter with you before we move on to the personal. Katie Fry was born in Perry, Georgia in December of 1880. And she married Bayard Robbins in 1899. And this letter is to him before they were married. He had given her an engagement ring, and she wrote this about the ring. Well, she wrote a lot, but I just want to pick out one paragraph. I had quite a scare about my ring last night. Mr. Cross and I went down to the church to preaching, and I wore my gloves down there. It was rather cool, and I pulled them off, and my hand being cold, the ring came off in the finger of the glove, as the glove was a little tight. It was not more than 5 minutes before I missed it, and I could not think for my life where it was, and of course scared nearly to death. I picked up the gloves and started to get up and go home to find it, but in picking up the gloves, I felt it in the finger. I have never felt so relieved in all my life.